After 40 years of marriage, the truth finally came out. It was early morning. The house was empty. The walls looked the same, but the air felt different. He stood in the living room for a long time without moving. The silence was not new. Silence had lived there for years, but now it felt final. Daniel was 62 years old, calm by nature, soft in speech, a man who believed patience could fix most things. He had believed that about his marriage, too. He walked slowly to the kitchen and made tea. The cup shook slightly in his hand, not from anger, from release. For years he had carried questions he never spoke, doubts he pushed away, pain he told himself would pass. He did not hate his wife. That was the hardest part. Her name was Margaret. To others she was respectful, religious, and devoted. She attended church every week. She spoke gently in public. She cared for neighbors when they were sick. People called her a blessing. Daniel used to feel proud when he heard that. Now he only felt tired. The truth had come slowly, not through shouting, not through confession. It came through small details that did not match. A late phone call, a hidden bank withdrawal, a silence that felt too careful. He had noticed changes years before he accepted them. Margaret had grown distant, not cold, just careful. She answered questions with short words. She smiled often, but her eyes did not stay. Daniel blamed himself first. Maybe I am boring. Maybe I stopped trying. Maybe I work too much. He never accused her. He never searched her phone. He never followed her. That was not who he was. He believed trust should be given, not forced. But trust without truth becomes heavy. One evening, 3 years before the divorce, Daniel returned home early. He had forgotten his wallet. The house was quiet. He heard Margaret's voice from the bedroom. It was soft, too soft. He stood still in the hallway. He did not want to listen, yet he could not move. Her voice carried a tone he had not heard in years, warm, alive. Then he heard a name, not his. His heart did not break loudly. It sank quietly. He walked outside before she saw him, sat in his car, held the steering wheel. His breathing was slow, but something inside him shifted forever. That night he said nothing. For months he said nothing. He watched, he waited, he hoped he was wrong. But truth does not disappear because we ignore it. Daniel discovered that Margaret had been meeting another man for almost a year, a man from her volunteer group, a man who spoke about faith and honesty in public. Daniel did not confront her immediately. Instead, he asked himself a question. What hurts more, the betrayal or losing her? The answer was not simple. He loved her. That love had grown over 40 years. It lived in habits, in shared mornings, in quiet dinners, in memories of raising their daughter together. Ending that felt like cutting off part of himself. So he stayed silent. He prayed. He blamed himself again. He tried to become more attentive. He brought flowers. He planned small trips. Margaret smiled. She thanked him. She remained distant. One night he finally asked her, "Are you happy?" She looked surprised. Then she said, "Of course." He nodded, but her voice did not reach her eyes. Daniel did not shout when he finally confronted her later. He simply placed printed bank statements on the table. He showed her messages he had seen by accident when she left her email open. Margaret's face turned pale. She did not deny it. That hurt more than denial. She said, "I never meant to hurt you," she whispered. Daniel believed her. That hurt even more, because betrayal without hate feels colder. They spoke for hours that night. No screaming, no breaking dishes, only slow, painful truth. She said she felt unseen for years. He said he never stopped seeing her. She said the other man made her feel young. He said he would have tried. She cried. He did not. But something inside him closed quietly. They tried counseling. They tried prayer. They tried distance. Nothing rebuilt what had cracked. Trust, once broken, does not return because we ask it to. 3 years later, he signed the divorce papers, and now he stood alone in the house they built together. The tea in his cup had gone cold. Daniel sat down and allowed the tears to fall. Not from anger, from grief. He was not grieving only his wife. He was grieving the version of life he believed was permanent. He whispered softly into the empty room, "I forgave you." The words were true, but forgiveness does not always mean staying. And that was the lesson he had learned too late.
The first crack in their marriage did not happen in the bedroom. It happened at church. Daniel remembered that morning clearly now. It was 5 years before the divorce. Margaret stood at the front, speaking to a group of women about faith and loyalty. Her voice was calm. Her words were strong. People listened with respect. Daniel sat in the third row. He watched her smile at everyone. He felt proud. But when the meeting ended, she did not look for him. She stayed behind, laughing softly with a man Daniel had seen only a few times before. His name was Thomas. He was new in the volunteer group, younger than Daniel by several years, confident, well-spoken. Daniel did not feel jealous then. He trusted his wife. That trust had been built over 40 years. It felt unbreakable. But small things began to change after that. Margaret started coming home later on Tuesdays. She said the volunteer group was growing. More work, more planning. Daniel nodded. He encouraged her to stay active. He believed purpose was good for both of them. He did not want to be the kind of husband who limited his wife. At night, she began sleeping closer to the edge of the bed. He noticed. He did not ask. Daniel believed love meant giving space when needed. Months passed. The distance grew quietly. No arguments, no anger. Only less warmth, less eye contact, less shared laughter. One evening, Daniel tried to talk. "Do you feel we are drifting?" he asked gently. Margaret looked confused. "No," she said quickly. "You worry too much." He apologized. That was his habit. He often apologized first, even when he did not know why. Inside, he felt something changing, but he blamed age. He blamed routine. He blamed himself for becoming too predictable. He started waking up earlier, exercising, reading more, trying to improve. He wanted to be interesting again. Margaret noticed the changes. She thanked him for helping more around the house, but she did not move closer. The night he heard her whisper another man's name, something inside him finally became clear. After that, Daniel began observing without reacting. He watched her protect her phone. He watched her smile at messages she did not share. He watched her choose new clothes more carefully on Tuesdays. He told himself he was imagining things, but imagination does not create bank transfers. One afternoon, Daniel went to the bank to ask about a small mistake in their account. The manager mentioned a separate withdrawal Margaret had made, a large one. Daniel had not known about it. He did not accuse her. He simply asked at dinner, "Did you take money for something?" She paused for a second too long. "Yes," she said, "for church donations." Daniel nodded. He did not believe her. That night he lay awake beside her. He listened to her breathing. He remembered the girl he married. She had been simple, honest, shy. They had grown up together, struggled together, built everything together. He wondered when she started feeling alone. He wondered if he had missed signs years earlier. The confrontation came on a rainy evening. Daniel placed the evidence gently on the table. No raised voice, no dramatic movement. Margaret stared at the papers for a long time. "I was going to tell you," she said. "When?" Daniel asked quietly. She had no answer. Thomas was married too. That detail shocked Daniel more than the affair itself. Both of them spoke about faith. Both of them advised others about loyalty. Daniel felt something deep and painful. Not anger, disappointment. He asked her one simple question. "Did you love him?" Margaret closed her eyes. "I don't know," she whispered. That uncertainty destroyed him, because it meant she had stepped outside their marriage, not from hate, but from emptiness. For the next year, Daniel tried to save what remained. He suggested trips. He suggested therapy. He suggested honesty. Margaret agreed to everything, but she did not end the affair immediately. That was the moment Daniel realized something important. You cannot repair a marriage alone. Trust needs two hands. When she finally ended it, it was already too late inside him. He forgave her, but he no longer felt safe. He began waking at night with a strange tightness in his chest, not from fear, from doubt. Every late arrival reopened the wound. Every unanswered call created silence in his mind. Margaret tried harder after that. She cooked his favorite meals. She spoke kindly. She cried often. But Daniel had changed. He became quieter. He stopped sharing small thoughts. He smiled less. One night she asked him, "Do you still love me?" He answered honestly, "Yes." She waited. "But I don't trust us anymore." That sentence marked the real ending. Love remained. Trust did not. And without trust, love feels like standing on broken ground.
They lived like that for 2 more years. Polite, careful, distant. Until one morning, Daniel realized he felt more alone with her than without her. That was the day he decided separation was not revenge, it was survival. Part 3. The day Margaret left the house was strangely quiet. There was no shouting, no slammed doors, no neighbors watching from their windows. Daniel stood near the hallway while she placed her clothes into 2 small suitcases. The sound of the zipper closing echoed softly through the room. 40 years of marriage had become 2 pieces of luggage. Daniel watched her move slowly between the bedroom and the living room. She avoided looking directly at him, not from anger, from shame. He understood that feeling. Shame had lived in the house for a long time. It sat between them during dinner. It followed them into the bedroom at night. It filled the spaces where laughter used to exist. Margaret finally stopped moving. "I never thought it would end like this," she said quietly. Daniel nodded. "Neither did I." For a moment, it felt like they were 2 strangers discussing someone else's life. She picked up her coat. Her hands trembled slightly. The confident woman who spoke in church every Sunday now looked small and uncertain. Daniel noticed the change. Betrayal damages more than one person. It damages everyone connected to it. Margaret walked to the door, then stopped. "Are you sure this is what you want?" she asked. Daniel did not answer immediately. He took a slow breath. He looked around the house. The photographs were still on the walls. Their daughter as a child, family vacations, holidays where everyone looked happy. Those memories were real, but they belonged to another time. "I wanted our marriage," Daniel said softly. "I just can't live inside doubt anymore." Margaret's eyes filled with tears. "I made a mistake," she whispered. Daniel did not disagree, but he also knew something deeper. Affairs are rarely a single mistake. They are many small choices repeated. Margaret reached for the door handle. Before opening it, she turned back. "Do you hate me?" Daniel looked at her for a long moment. No. That answer surprised her. "I don't hate you, but I cannot forget what trust felt like before." She lowered her eyes. "I understand." Then she opened the door and stepped outside. The door closed gently behind her. Daniel stood still for several minutes after she left. The house felt larger suddenly. The silence felt different now, not tense, just empty. He walked slowly into the living room and sat in his usual chair. For the first time in years, his thoughts felt clear. Painful, but clear. During the first weeks after the separation, Daniel moved through life slowly. He kept his routines simple: morning tea, a short walk, reading in the afternoon. Friends called him. Some spoke with anger toward Margaret. Others tried to offer advice. Daniel listened politely, but shared very little. He did not want revenge. He did not want sympathy. He only wanted peace. One evening, his daughter visited. She had known about the problems for months. Margaret had told her before the divorce papers were signed. They sat together at the kitchen table. "Are you okay, Dad?" she asked. Daniel thought about the question carefully. "I'm healing," he answered. She reached across the table and held his hand. "I'm sorry you went through this." Daniel squeezed her hand gently. "Life is not always fair, but it is still life." Weeks turned into months. Margaret called several times. At first, she wanted to talk about practical things: bills, legal details, property. Later, the conversations became more emotional. One evening, she asked if they could meet. Daniel agreed. They chose a small cafe near the park. When Margaret walked in, Daniel noticed she looked older. The confident energy she once carried had faded. They sat across from each other quietly. "I ended everything with him," she said. Daniel nodded. "I know." She surprised. "How?" "People talk." Margaret stared at her coffee. "He left his wife too," she said softly. "But it didn't last." Daniel was not shocked. Relationships built on secrecy often collapse under truth. "I thought it would make me happy," she continued, "but it only made everything worse." Daniel listened carefully. "I hurt you," she said. "Yes," Daniel replied. "And I hurt myself." Daniel believed that too. Margaret looked at him with tired eyes. "Is there any chance we could start again?" The question hung in the air between them. Daniel closed his eyes for a moment. Part of him wanted to say yes. 40 years of shared life does not disappear easily. But another part of him remembered the nights of doubt, the quiet anxiety, the feeling of never being certain. Trust once broken becomes fragile forever. Daniel opened his eyes. "I forgive you," he said gently. Margaret's face filled with hope, but then he continued.
Forgiveness and rebuilding are not the same. Her hope faded slowly. I understand. They finished their coffee in silence. When they stood to leave, Margaret reached out and touched his arm. I truly am sorry. Daniel looked at her with calm eyes. I know. They walked in opposite directions after that. For the first time since the divorce, Daniel felt something unexpected. Not anger, not sadness. Closure. And closure, he realized, was the first step towards peace.
Autumn arrived quietly that year. Daniel noticed it during his morning walk. The air felt cooler. The trees near the park had begun to change color. Leaves moved slowly across the ground as the wind pushed them along the path. He walked there almost every day now. The routine helped him think. Life after the divorce did not suddenly become happy. Healing never happens that way. Some mornings he still woke up expecting to hear Margaret moving in the kitchen. Sometimes he reached for the other side of the bed before remembering it was empty. Those moments hurt, but the pain no longer felt sharp. It felt distant, like an old memory slowly fading. Daniel had learned something important during the months alone. Loneliness and peace are not the same thing. For years inside his marriage, he had felt lonely while sharing the same house. Now he lived alone, yet his mind felt calmer. The difference was honesty. One afternoon he received a letter. Margaret's handwriting was easy to recognize. He sat at the table for a long time before opening it. Not from anger, from caution. Some words carry weight. Inside the envelope was a single page. She wrote about regret. She wrote about how the relationship with Thomas had ended quickly after the divorce. Without secrecy, their connection lost its excitement. Arguments replaced passion. Blame replaced affection. Daniel was not surprised. Affairs often survive only in hidden spaces. Margaret wrote that she had started attending counseling. She said she finally understood the damage she caused, not only to Daniel, but to herself. At the end of the letter, she wrote something simple. I hope you find peace, even if that peace no longer includes me. Daniel folded the letter slowly. For a moment he stared at the window. He realized he did not feel anger reading her words, only sadness. Sadness for two people who once loved each other deeply and lost their way. Weeks later, he saw Margaret again by accident. It happened at the grocery store. They noticed each other at the same moment near the entrance. For a second, both seemed unsure whether to speak. Then Daniel nodded politely. Margaret walked closer. She looked different now. Not dramatic, but quieter. Life had clearly been difficult for her as well. How have you been? She asked. Better, Daniel said honestly. She smiled gently. I'm glad. They stood in silence for a moment. Finally, she said something that surprised him. I'm learning how to live with the consequences of my choices. Daniel respected that honesty. Life teaches us slowly, he replied. Margaret nodded. Yes, it does. Before leaving, she said one more thing. You were always kinder than I deserved. Daniel shook his head softly. Kindness is not weakness. Margaret looked at him with understanding. I know that now. Then she left the store. Daniel watched her walk away, feeling something unexpected inside his chest. Relief. Not because she was gone, because the past no longer controlled him. Later that evening,
Daniel sat on his porch with a cup of tea. The sun was setting slowly behind the trees. The sky carried soft colors of orange and gray. He thought about the long road behind him. 40 years of marriage, 3 years of silent pain, a divorce that felt like losing part of his identity. Yet somehow he was still here, still breathing, still capable of peace. Daniel realized something important. Forgiveness had not been a gift to Margaret, it had been a gift to himself. Holding anger would only keep the past alive. Letting it go allowed the future to exist again. He closed his eyes and listened to the evening sounds around him. For the first time in many years, his mind felt quiet. Not empty, just calm. Life had not given him the ending he once imagined, but it had given him something else: clarity. Trust could be broken, love could fail, but dignity, patience, and forgiveness could survive even betrayal. Daniel finished his tea and stood up slowly. The night air felt cool against his face. Inside the house, the lights were warm. He stepped through the door and closed it behind him. The past remained part of his story, but it was no longer his future. And for the first time in a long while, Daniel Wilson felt something steady growing inside him. Peace.